So, why are we here today? And what do we want to learn? Who has, let's go around and find a volunteer who can volunteer themselves to start, and then the people next to them to continue. And say, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I would really like to know this about discussions, or I have found this point about discussions. That's my main point. Yes, Jeff.
Hi, I'm Jeff. I'm from the Department of French and Italian. What I would like to know is how to make discussions more of an organic conversation and less of a check-the-box chart for students. And sort of as a side note, too, or part B of that, especially in a foreign language classroom versus an English language discussion board.
I'm going to make those 2 points. All right, good. Whoever wants to go next on it.
Sure. My name is Kenny. I'm a grad student in the kinesiology department. I'm just curious to see how other people are using discussions.
Hey. I'm going to put it in down there for them. We'll do others.
Angela, biomolecular chemistry. I've been thinking about ways to maybe try to use discussions to help foster community in a face-to-face class. So, not sure how to do that, and I haven't tried, but
All right, community building.
I'm Louis. I work in the English as a second language program, so I deal a lot with international students. I've tried discussions in classes. They have not worked very well. And now I'm glad I'm reading some of these tips here to see what I was doing wrong. But also, I'd like to know whether, advantages, disadvantages, pros and cons, discussions over setting up peer reviews or setting up collaborations within groups. Does it have to be a discussion, or is there something specific about discussions that I'm not getting?
So peer review and collaboration, and also less than 10 minutes in, and we already have a win.
Tom Bryan, Nelson Institute and UW Housing, and discussions seem like a holy grail. A perfect discussion seems like a holy grail, unattainable, but really could be so valuable, it could be legendary. But I'm particularly interested in using discussions, not as assignments, but for quiz and exam prep, so voluntary discussions.
Exam prep. And I heard natural again. Okay.
We're going through this. Hi, I'm Helen. I'm actually interested in prevent fatigue from discussion, because every week it's in there, and what can we do to make it more interesting? And that's not the same every week.
Some weeks you just don't.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Kari.
Hi, I'm Kari Jorrell. I'm part of Do It AT. I consult with faculty, instructors on both fully online and blended courses. So I've kind of supported a lot of thinking around discussions. I'm just really curious to hear how they're using discussions also. Thinking more, I guess, about groups, forming groups that for group type of for a large enrollment course. If there's a nice way that we can get some sort of a graded artifact out of a group discussion.
Yeah, and making it sort of easier, more manageable, so that we don't have to go through 500 individual students.
Yes.
I'm Lauren Rosen. I direct the collaborative language program for the UW system, and I have used discussions in courses that I've taught, and I know my instructors do. One of the things that can get overwhelming is, as an instructor, keeping up with all of the comments from students. There's definitely a fine line we've discovered between intervening too often, so we try to let the discussion happen among them, but eventually those discussions can get too long to track, some good ways of sort of, we've tried having something like one student summarize the whole discussion or things like that to just, but I'd love more ideas.
Yeah, back to that administration.
I'm Heidi, and I'm also with ESL, and I'm interested in the possibility of using discussions not necessarily for discussion, but for some other purpose. Maybe, for example, for sharing information or links. Like if you ask students who are taking a pronunciation class, can everybody please post one pronunciation link they find valuable? Is anybody using discussions for information sharing? Student-centered information sharing.
Yeah. And I love that idea, just to get them involved. That gives them some agency. So cool, let's talk about that as well. All right.
I'm Colleen. I'm an instructional designer in the Division of Continuing Studies. So I'm just more interested in discussions as it pertains to completely online courses. And as was already mentioned, the community building. So how do you get your students to know another one just completely online?
Yeah, when you don't have the face-to-face interaction, it's harder. All right, Janet.
I'm Janet Staker-Warner. I'm from the Division of Continuing Studies. We teach totally online. And I'm interested in the strategic placement of discussion threads. Sort of like what Helen mentioned, do you have them every week, or are you very strategic about where they're placed within the course?
All right.
I'm Morton Ingernsbacher, and I'm in psychology, and I'm the Morton in that handout. and I've been, by choice, teaching online everything from small seminars with 6 students to large quote-unquote power lecture courses with 130 students for over 15 years. So I've been doing a lot of online discussion during that time. So I'm really eager to hear what other people are doing as well.
Awesome.
I'm Lindy Stoll. I work in chemistry, and we possibilities that are there. We talked about some student wiki pages for that, and I don't know if discussion is the right place or if the right place. I don't know what's the right venue, but yeah, so I'm kind of trying to recommission.
So I'm going to, because I know what you guys do, I'm going to introduce discussion versus Piazza.
Yeah, so we do use Piazza. Yeah.
And what are the pros and cons, and how might one work in a place that the other one doesn't, and is it too much of them both, which it might be.
Right. I'm Dina Dukes, and I'm on our faculty department, and I'm actually a research and outreach coordinator. We're actually starting to develop an online conservation course with water stewardship. So I'm wondering if this works with adult learners as well. So there's a generational side to it.
All right, yeah. Kids these days, they're always texting, but
Yes.
not, my grandma's not doing that yet.
No.
Good.
Hi, I'm Tanya Cuthbert. I'm from the College of Ag and Life Science. I coordinate an early start program, which we launched this summer for incoming first-year students. And so it started with the 8-week online course. I have talked before, had not had success with discussions. We needed discussions in our course for content hours and just engagement. We ended up having a great problem, which was exceptional student engagement among the discussions, because they all wanted to be each other's friend, and they're going to college. And a lot of our discussions were pretty more opinions, like sharing what you think, things like that. But the problem gets at the large course, keeping track of all the discussions. So what I heard back from students was that it was hard for them sometimes to find when someone commented. And we've broken down 100 students into 25 student groups, but even 25 students, it's a great problem to have. We have a really good discussion, and it's
really discussing.
right. And students were like, I'm spending more time trying to find who replied to me, and I want to reply and be nice. So better ways of structuring things.
Cliff.
My name's Cliff Cunningham. I work with John here in Dude Academic Technology. Actually, the one thing I got a support call just yesterday. Did you all know that by default there's a checkbox turned on for all your courses that allows students to make their own discussions? And I had one faculty get blindsided by that, not realizing the functionality was there and realizing that her whole discussion thing pot because the students started creating their own threads instead of replying to the existing thread. So just, we'll show you where the checkbox is, and if you don't want it, turn it off before it hits you. So,
Let me just add to that, the feature on Canvas for allowing students to attach a file to a discussion board is also hidden down in the bowels of it. And so that's probably the number one thing I share with my colleagues is that you go to the class settings and then you go to more because it's hidden down there. And because several of my colleagues will assign some, students to attach something and assume that that's on by default, and it is not on by default.
All right. Jennifer.
I'm from Warren Baker. I'm a practice assistant with Do It in the active teaching labs with John. And I'm just interested in seeing what challenges everyone's having with discussions and what solutions you have. So
Jennifer puts together our activity sheets every week, so and makes things happen. And the coffee around the room and all that sort of stuff. So
I'm Linda LePay. I'm across the street in consumer science in Sohi, and I'm here with a colleague. So I'm in the personal finance program. Nancy's in the retail and consumer behavior program. We use discussions in our internship class, but keeping track when you have in the summer, we use it a lot for the summer course, and keeping track of who's posted, who's responded is cumbersome. Number two, we are taking one of our financial life skills classes and putting it online so that we can reach more students. And we utilize peer educators in the classroom, and I want to translate that experience maybe through discussion board so that students who are taking this class online feel a connection to another student who is there to lead them. And not quite sure how to get there, but I think discussion in this may be a tool.
yeah, I mean, there's part of the student sharing, there's part of the community building in that. And you're talking about big courses, so you guys are going to get the, yeah.
Like how big is it?
Well, right now we have 4 or 5 sections of 45 students. We're going to run it as one big section, and then online, and then have students assigned in pods with the peer educators. And so how would we do that?
Okay.
Linda kind of introduced me already. Thank you. But I've been doing online discussions since 2002. I started in Blackboard and then D2L and now Canvas. And I did my doctoral research on that too. So I'm the Nancy Murray in the thing there. And they've been evolved over time. I do use them with my classes for assignments so that other students can see what they're posting and giving examples and links. But the part that I really need with the online discussions and that we use is for interns that are across the world over the summer doing online discussions with one another, which is the only way to interact with one another. And it's been a positive thing. But now with Canvas, we can't track who's participating and who's not. And so this workaround with Google Sheets is what we've been doing. But it's not a great solution, and I'm just begging Canvas to find a better way to do that because it was easy with D2L, and now it's very difficult with Canvas.
So the analytics.
Yes. What's that?
One more, and then we're going to drill down.
Okay.
Rob Beatty, I'm in the Nelson Institute. I teach a spring all online graduate class, about 26 students. There are students who know one another from being in a cohort, so getting them to talk to each other is actually quite easy. So my puzzle right now is to try and make discussions less linear and more like they are in face-to-face, because people read down that list and they aren't, and it's hard. It's a phenomenon of how they read, but I want to make them less linear. So maybe it's more natural and organic.
Yeah.
To get people to respond to one another as opposed to the thread, I guess is the way to describe it.
Yeah. Okay. So this is what the points that we should try to hit on so that everybody goes away happy today. We're not going to, but even this awareness is good. And again, at the bottom of this, it's nice to add those notes if you have ideas throw those in and make the connections so that we can follow afterward. But should we start off with the linear, the analytics? Or yes, I'm seeing some yeses.
Please, the analytics sounds great, but sure, we'll go there. I was going to say, with regard to, but we'll go to analytics. We'll come back to the other. So I'm not sure I'm tracking your concern and what was easier in D2L than Canvas.
D2L, you'd be able to look to see what students haven't participated in any discussions yet. So I would be able to connect with them another way, maybe by email, and say, I've noticed you haven't been participating, or your participation is low, but and I'd be able to see precisely how many times they've replied, how many different ones they've gone to.
So, and I assume that you're considering the discussion boards graded so that you can see
because
that.
that's the majority part of the class.
So that you're seeing, so you're able to see like no entry, and that's not, and I'm still kind of blocked. So you're seeing that there's not a
So there's 10
not
weeks,
entry.
there's 10 weeks, let's say 70 students. That's each student is gonna have all those discussions, and now I don't know who has participated, who's replied.
But if you've got it graded and you have a deadline for it, you would know.
Yeah, you have to go in manually each student and check it off. It's very cumbersome.
Yeah, create a spreadsheet.
But you just download the grades. And you download the grade into an Excel and you just count.
Where are the grades coming? Is
have to
discussion
manually
set up as an assignment?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So discussion is set up as an assignment. It's graded. It has a deadline. If someone misses that deadline, you tell Canvas, call it a 0 when they miss the deadline. And then you download the Excel spreadsheet right there.
So SpeedGrader
The
allows you
SpeedGrader
to see what each individual student has
Right.
contributed to a discussion. It just includes their stuff.
No one's known this before.
This is a nice.
So let's talk about that because that I think is, because I also was on D2L for a zillion years, teaching 130 students. SpeedGrader, this is another little trick of the trade, is that you want students to post and respond to another student. The number one best thing to do is to make that all one assignment in Canvas. And that way, when you go to SpeedGrader, you can see their initial post and you can see all their responses. It's all there on that one assignment. It's a little tricky because Canvas can't handle the 2 different deadlines. And I'm a staunch believer that your post deadline should be earlier and it should be a hard deadline versus your response deadline. So that's a little trickier. I grant you that. But that to me is worth the price of Canvas, is having post and response. And particularly for my assignments, I usually require students to respond to 3 different students. And having to find all of those was just a nightmare.
Okay, let's go back to the beginning here. I'm opening up an assignment.
Let's go to grade.
So unfortunately, we don't have any graded assignments that I can show you this, but in SpeedGrader, suffice to say, there is an option to look at both individuals.
I have something I can show you.
All right.
But you don't have it.
Yeah, someone just put it in.
You don't have it, John.
John, you don't have it. It's not my course, but it's somebody else's course.
I
but
can show one
but I
from
can
my
show it.
course.
All right, come on, plug in. And while you're plugging in,
Mine is at the University of Minnesota.
you can't plug in. You want to bring yours up and plug in?
Yeah, can you, I don't have, can you just give me an incognito with it?
And then we will, there you go. And then let's hit something else and start, or Jeff.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I think for me at least, the issue of the graded conversation is what makes it a checkbox busy work assignment. You know, you have this one post, and then you have to reply to one person, and then you wash your hands, you're done. So I think that at the same time sort of threads the conversation about whether or not it's going to be natural, organic.
Well, my suggestion, and that's where I was thinking that going a few minutes ago, and this is, I've seen, and I used to do this in my classes, but I don't do it as much anymore, is that I post discussion board forums, so boards that are called things like water coolers, or what do you think, or share with others. And they're not graded. And people like me who are quite loquacious and would want to just chat all day can find those. other people who do want to, you know, get in, you know, more, go with the more organized. But the water cooler, there's actually data about using, quote, water cooler discussion boards and the improvement, the carryover improvement to the graded discussions. Because this is back to what you were talking about with the, just a chit chat with, you know, oh, did you guys see so and so? Did you see the AMAs last night? You know, something like that. That really goes on the water cooler. And then if you can, you know, get some of that conversation over to the water cooler. So the water cooler is just like the old fashioned water cooler that people would just stand around and talk at. And there are some people who check in every day. It's like going on to Facebook. They check in every day. And there are data showing that having something, a mechanism like that, an ungraded, call it whatever you want, water cooler, tips and tricks, blah, 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 improves the graded assignments. Not just because of this issue, but also because it warms people up. Some people really don't want to just go off and tick their box.
And there's part of this as well that I want to talk about is having your picture there. If you have your students do that, they're not just a name then, they're a name and a face. And that I think also helps with student community building. And if you think about it in discussions, every time you do a post, it's like Ornan Gernsbacher and there's her picture. And it's not, you know, a live one, but it is a, you know, that's her. That's the person who sits 3 rows in front of me and over there. And it starts to provide real world anchors for these otherwise disembodied discussions. In some ways, this gets to your question about, is there a place for the students to share these things? Now, one of the things that I loved about when I maybe read into yours was, as an assignment, they are sharing that. So that forces them to go out and find more resources that are personal to them that you might not have ever thought about.
They're doing it for Monday, I'll let you know.
All right, yeah. We should have held this next week.
I was going to say, I think one of the things that helped with some of the more organic discussion in our class, and this is like a first year seminar class, so I have the luxury of doing some assignments that maybe aren't as practical in other classes. But I had to students really early on in the semester peer interview each other, and it was within those subgroups that were their discussions. So again, too, I think that helps you feel like when you start to know somebody on a level, you're more likely to give a meaningful reply to them, not want somebody to be left without a reply in their posts, things like that.
Yeah. And especially in both for community buildings, but then also for groups, you know, having that ability to at least get to know 2 or 3 other people or whatever the right group size is for your class.
Sort of related to this, trying to make it a little less linear. Is it, I don't know if anyone does structure it a little differently. One this week has to both make a comment and a reply. Maybe you alternate the roles. So like one week half the class, you're making comments, but you also need to like check back in and kind of continue the conversation, but the other half is just making comment. Like, so you're still kind of doing maybe half the class you have to make a comment by this date. Other class you need to respond at some other time. But then like try to encourage, like go back and reread those responses. And so that way it's not that everyone's feeling like, well, I have to go read everything and comment on everything.
Well, and having different dates, there is another one.
Yeah.
So they're not just going in and it's the don't parachute in.
Yeah.
Right,
So,
because if you feel like, oh, I have to make a comment and I have to respond, but I don't want to read 20 people's responses. So I'm
Right.
just going to pick the one that's shortest and respond to it.
Right.
Done. But if you know every other week you're doing one or the other, that might at least give
and
you more
different
time.
roles this week versus next week is another way to do that.
I would say an add-on to that is, you know, about the not just going to pick the one that's the shortest, is that you have to respond to someone, and there's some other criteria.
Right.
So that who also thinks X, or who also posted Y, or who did not post X or Y. So at least they're having to look through enough to find which ones are the ones I'm supposed to be responding to.
And that's part of the assigned actions in here. This is really a great handout. Tim.
Did you want to just have a quick look at how this board?
Yeah, it's speed grader here.
Do you want to see this on speed grader?
Okay.
And there was just that's not the thing that you can get by a gradebook that really might be useful to you. So I believe, Cliff, you you can help me here, but I believe you can get into graded discussions through discussions or through assignments, because that's where all graded items exist.
Once a discussion has the check mark that says make it a graded discussion, yes, it'll show up in both.
So seeing that shows that it's a graded discussion? Good.
Saying what?
The due date?
Having a due date?
Because the only way you'd have a due date is once you turn, that's right, okay,
right.
there is like a,
You can do it to do.
there's a.
There's
So
to do,
I
okay,
teach-
that's
I
new,
teach
isn't
a
it?
CP 125 course, and we do have discussion boards in that, and so there's some that are ungraded, but you can add it to their to-do list.
So I understand that just looking at the discussion, you would have to go down and note down who all replied and who contributed. So how do you get into this?
So to that little 3 dots, the speed
That's
grader,
it,
3
thank
dots,
you.
speed
Yes.
grader.
And those 3 dots are called the shish kebab?
Oh!
Did you just make that up?
I did not just make that
No,
up.
you did that last. And so there you can see each student and what that particular student did.
And if they responded to other students, you'll see all those responses there.
Right.
Oh, so all of their responses.
If you've made it one assignment, that's the key. But that is, to me, I'm gonna say it again, because I was on D2L and, I used D2L like the caveman used the pig. Yeah, I got every morsel out of it that I could. That lumping everything in the speed grader is worth the price of Canvas. For every other concerns that we might have about Canvas.
This link, the view the full discussion helps you place a context. So here it is, decontextualized. It's what they first posted, all of their comments, but you don't necessarily see that this comment had to do with something else. If you want to see what that something else was, then you have to click on the view discussion.
You can immediately see who hasn't done anything
Right.
because they don't have the orange dot.
Right.
If you graded it, it has a check mark. The other thing that I think is possibly useful to you is on the grade sheet and the kind of participation compared to others. It's going to time for that. This is not my course, by the way. This is my boss's course. And is it just pressing on the name? There. So you can see how a student is doing compared to other students. It's activity compared to the class, so moderate.
And I'll share with you this summer, I did go into analytics and compared that and then went and hand did it.
Right.
And
But
it
you can-
wasn't the same.
So you can do that, I'm not.
Okay, that's really good to know.
But what I was gonna show while you're in Gradebook is if you go over to the export, you can export at any time. You can export a CSV file, as opposed to the drugstore, a CSV file, and just count up the zero, it would take like maybe not 2 seconds, but 5 seconds to just, have Excel or numbers or whatever program you use, just count up the zeros or the missings, whatever is there. And I export, because I have a class of 130, I do export probably, once a week, just to check in, to see where people are at. But it's all there. Can I mention one other thing about export, which is, I think that with our most recent update, you folks will know better, they stopped putting the student's UW email address on here. It is still in export.
Yes.
Yes, win. You know me, I always have these workarounds. It is totally, thank you. This is my goal, is to come here and have John say there's one thing he didn't know already. Yes.
What was this again?
Canvas, UW has now taken the students' email addresses off of the people list, which I used to use all the time. I also use, the the list, and you can get it off there, but you can get it's in export. It is in the export file.
With principal instructor role, they're keeping that sharing
How I get it, I don't know.
for privacy or something. But the problem is if you have a large class and there are 2 people with the same name, without that net ID, you sometimes don't know.
So you have, the export gives you net ID and it gives you the email address, net ID.
They
which
just don't
to me
realize
is
that
heaven.
yet. Now that they've heard it,
Heaven.
they're gonna take it.
That's another reason why I do the export. And the nice thing about Canvas export is that it shows you the most recent export. It's like Qualtrics, the most recent one versus the previous ones.
Rob, you have a question?
No, it's not a question, it's a comment, and it may not have anything to do with this overall discussion, but I showed you, you showed a little tab where you were able to sort of show the student's grade compared to other students.
The little stars.
Yeah, so actually, students have access to a grade comparison by default, unless you turn it off. And that's caused a lot of problems both for me and colleagues who don't necessarily want students to see how they compare to their peers. It's like one of the first things.
Someone should
Is
do
that
it.
a checkbox?
It is.
It's a
It
checkbox
is.
in
It's a
the
checkbox
course
on your
settings,
grade.
but it's by default, all students can see.
And if we go there, that's the same location. So I'm sorry, slow down, Tim. Tim's in settings.
Sorry, yes.
Right.
Settings.
Go to your grades.
And on the main tab, which is on the left-hand side, there's like 5 tabs across the top. But yeah, go down to more options. And
This
that's
is
where
a really big thing for a lot of things in Canvas, that if you
For
don't
more
have
options.
more options thing.
for being hidden in such a little bitty link. But yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the 3 check boxes there.
Hide
Right, but the
grade
grades are-
distribution graphs
There you
from
go.
students.
Yeah.
So all students can automatically see the grade distribution and where they fall in
Right,
it.
which-
That may be useful
Right.
to you, but if
But
you're,
that's where it is.
you may not want students to see that.
So sometimes it really does help the students to think, oh my gosh, I'm studying so hard, or I don't know, I'm doing pretty well in this class. I just put in an hour a week. But where do I compare with everybody else? Everybody else must be doing badly. If they see that, they can start to think, well, maybe I should put in more time.
It should be, you should, that's perfectly useful. You should be conscious about the fact that
Right.
it's always on.
Right.
You should know that that's always
Totally.
on.
That's the default on. And the first, the 2 check boxes, like below the number 3, let students attach files. That's the one that Morgan was
Yeah.
referring to. And then one right below it is let students create discussions. That was the one that's blindsided.
Exactly. Well, and it
that's right,
shouldn't,
that's
I
right,
mean, well,
that's
if we
right.
were
Well,
designing things.
and actually, what's worth, I raised that question with our with the system admin, and they said they're going to look into like, well, so actually maybe quick survey, like, what should the default settings on all these be? And it might be worth getting.
I think maybe just having, I'm sure somewhere someone has kind of just a cheat sheet of some of these tips and tricks, like that you can get email addresses off the grade
somebody has that,
export.
huh?
And so it's things like that, I think. And this one though, the attached files, John knows my workaround about images, attaching, importing images to discussion boards, which is.
You guys want to know about that? I can tell you.
A picture of a document.
No.
Okay.
You know how horrible it is for students to attach, to put embed an image into one of their discussion boards. They have to like upload it to their private files. They have to blah, 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 blah. Super workaround is just to put them in a group. Because once you put everyone, you can even put everyone in a group. But once you put them in a group, they get the same privileges the instructor does. It's not drag and drop. It's not drag and drop, but it is, you don't have to go anywhere else. You just upload it and click it in.
So you can have all of your discussions in group discussion where the group is everybody in class.
Yeah. Or you can have them, you should have them smaller.
It's supposed to be easier on the Canvas app now as well. I have not tested this, but they've recently said that, all right, we've made it easier. We've updated the Canvas app to do that. I'm hearing some nods against that, but Kenny, you got a question?
Just kind of backing up to like grading and like tallying everything, because the way we want to use it is kind of like a forced study group.
Mm-hmm.
We give them review questions. They have to post so many of them and then respond to so many of them. I know this kind of goes back to last week, the group grading, making sure that we're doing it manually per student. And there's a checkbox for that, right?
Yes.
Where does that end up?
That's in your discussion board. When you're first setting up your discussion board, you decide whether the grade should be individual or for a group.
Okay.
And speaking of other little tricks, when you set up the discussion board, there you go. So you want to call it a group discussion, but you don't want it to be graded, if you don't want it to be graded as a group.
I can't change
And
that.
it's
Yeah.
You need a group set, and I know this.
Right. And these are some other options that are just, allow threaded, to me, back to what everyone else was saying. That's worth the again, you have to know that that's one to turn on. Otherwise, it's just this yucky. So allow threaded is your number one thing to turn on there.
So, with threaded, just a follow up to that, is that so students are trying to see who replied to them, or where that reply is. Is there a good way of setting that up so they get a notification when someone replies to something they posted rather than here's a notification of what everybody posted?
My understanding is that's something they set up in their account.
Right, right.
So underneath. the
Under
little-
their own account.
Okay,
Their
and
own
there's one that says,
account.
send me
Right,
Okay.
yes, and there's like 4 levels of it. It's tell me once a week, tell me at the end of the day, email me immediately, text me.
But is that for the whole activity or like somebody replied to something I posted?
That is something they set up on their own for their own personal thing, and it can vary from person to person. As an instructor, it's a good idea to let them know that you should probably get these things pretty regularly because it may affect your participation in the class. Colleen, you've been away for a long time.
I just wanted to offer a few pieces of advice as it concerns the settings menu and the settings for the assignment. On the regular settings menu, you can choose to allow students to delete their posts. And at my previous institution, if someone posted something questionable and deleted it, there was no way to recover that. So keep that in mind. And the second other kind of issue with allowing students to delete their discussion posts, if you keep that checked, but under your assignments, you require that they post before. I think the wording is specifically students must post before they could see other replies.
Yeah.
So for example, if the post is regarding chapter 1 that they were supposed to read and you don't want them kind of piggybacking off of what everybody else said, students were posting gibberish, deleting it, and then being able to see others' responses. So you might want to keep that.
They're so smart.
But I will say that's also the case with editing. That, if you allow them to edit their posts, that will also happen is that they can, I think that's those are the ones where I think we have to do more work with regard to like the type of assignment that we can't, those are.
This is all part of the game of school, I think.
Yeah.
Things that you pick up when you're a sophomore, junior, or senior.
Cliff, I did want to say, and I think I had encountered this before, but now Tim's not able to hit that. This is a group discussion.
Well, because
people
have already
but I just opened up a brand new discussion, went through it, and that option for individual grades is not there for discussions. You can
do it every day of my life.
I'm just saying, the checkbox is not there.
Oh,
The checkbox is not there. It's there for assignments, but it's not there for discussions. And I think I
If
have
you've
read that
graded
before.
it, did you set it up as a graded?
It was a brand new.
Because
So once you make
maybe
it
it's the
an
opposite.
assignment.
Oh, hold on, you're right. That's a really
I
good
do. I
distinction.
have done it
I didn't-
7,000 times in the
Okay,
last
okay.
year.
Okay. That's right. I did not hit the checkbox to make it
Thank
graded. I just jumped.
Thank
I
you.
went from straight into. Oh, I thought I had more.
This is like
All right.
stuff the do it tech people all day.
15 minutes left. What else do we want to focus on here?
So, can we talk a little bit about community building?
Yeah.
In groups and large enrollment. So, as I mentioned, one of the things I do with 130 students is they're in groups of 9. And I know never go larger than 9. And my eval data show that students say they had more peer interaction in my course than they did in a course of 25 because they're in a group of 9. Good, and Canvas does that for you automatically. That's groups. You tell it how many groups you want, and it will put them in groups. It's super easy. And then again, when you assign, I'm sorry.
No.
Oh, sorry. Anyway, so there's that piece about community building. And, but I also do we're in psychology, but nonetheless, I do a lot of assignments that are, just even at the very beginning, things like, in my psychological effects of the internet, what's your favorite YouTube? What's your favorite website and why? And find someone who's talked about a website that you've never heard of, that you would like to learn more about, and go talk to. And that's the psych internet course. I also teach cut and dry research methods, but I try to work really hard and not just at the beginning of the term, but all the way through the term, build in at least one assignment every unit that is this quote unquote community building. It's something that they really would like to talk with somebody else about, as opposed to, I also have assignments that you were talking about. What did chapter 1 say?
Yeah, but what's unique about the online discussion that provides community building that any other feature doesn't provide? So I guess the question, this is sort of the question that I
Something
have.
to structure it so that it is a community building, right?
Right, but I'm saying,
So
but why do
why-
you need the forum for that kind of
Sure.
discussion?
Why not
can't
have
you-
it? Why not?
I'll weigh in. The data show that there are certain students who in a face-to-face class, you might not really hear from. all
No, I guess
semester
I'm
long.
saying, why is the written discussion post unique versus, for example, a video group conversation? What is it about?
The data show that, that when you have face-to-face, like a video conversation, if it's more than 3 people, that there are going to be asymmetries in terms of who participates. You put me in a group, as you can see right now. Nobody else will get a word in edgewise. I will suck up every piece of oxygen in the room. You put me on a discussion board, and sure, I could just write for hours, but that's just one post, and most people are going to skip over it because it's just too long and hockey.
And while she's writing, you can start writing as well, your own posts, so
The data
there's
show
a chance to get in.
that asynchronous written discussion is dramatically more egalitarian, dramatically.
Even if people admittedly skip each other's post.
Because they at least get a chance to make posts.
How many people are tuning me out when I keep droning on in person? I mean, this happens in face-to-face conversation all the time.
Maybe during the mix of both.
Yeah, I'm saying if you set, I mean, obviously if you set a word limit, but if you allow someone to write the phone book, and then you know that that type of post is not useful.
Oh, and I think that's a very good
I'm not
point
saying it's
in
perfectly
keeping
egalitarian.
the things concise, because we do recognize that we read tweets, right? But we don't necessarily read all of the medium things.
Right, but that sort of, you know, cuts against the original concern that I had about making it a natural, non-busy work assignment.
But Rob, I was gonna say, first about that, the nature of the prompt is really important.
Yeah.
So structuring the prompt in a way where it's substantive and conversational, but doesn't ask them to repeat the encyclopedia answer is part of it. And the other thing is, you can make these, more conversational if you do that, if you sort of bring that personal element into it. It's a challenge, but it definitely.
Because if you can hook their passions and enlist them to bring in something they're passionate about, they will automatically become more conversational.
And many of us are familiar with doing this in the classroom, where we adjust, right? You hear what they're saying, and like, oh, they're taking this in this different direction. I want them to bring in their real life, and you say that in the prompt. And so the challenge here is, of course, that those prompts are little static things. You put them up there, and they live or die, and then you feel despair that you didn't do a good job. And maybe you put them all up at the beginning of the class, and you're frantically trying to change the ones later in the class because they're too dry and boring.
Would facilitation sort of help with that? At some point, you either as the instructor being a facilitator, or again, you could potentially assign rotating students that would be the ones that kind of go in and say, hey, I noticed that you and you down here are talking about the same thing, or because if it's a static prompt, then it's always going to be.
It's always challenging.
So hang on, Tim, you've got something to say, and then I want to go into that administration, how do we do all of these, how do we keep, let's go into the tracking thing. But Tim, you had
real quick, I was just thinking, because you're talking about language learners, just like I have language learners, and I do wonder whether having that written form as a discussion kind of gives me a chance to get my language right before it's publicly shown. Whereas a video, I don't get that option so much. But
and both are valuable.
Yeah.
This will probably segue to the administration, but one of the things that I also meter is, and this is back, I think, to one of the questions that was raised earlier, is how much I jump into the discussion, which is and all the students can see, all the students in my little 9-person group can see, versus how much I respond to the student directly. And I do that on the speed grader, even before it's graded. So in their introduction posts, I have all 130 students write an introduction post. I respond to literally all 130 students. That's just something I do. That's just my thing. But I do that on speed grader as opposed to on the discussion board, because otherwise it would make the discussion board horribly long. And secondly, I really want it to be personal. I want it to be, I'm talking to you as an individual student. Maybe they mention something personal and I share something personal to them, and it's just that little twosome. So I calibrate between how much I jump in to the discussion board for everybody versus how much I respond to a certain student. And calling back to you were talking about with maybe not the ones that get deleted because they're inappropriate. But if I need to shape a student, I will do it on the speed grader or via email rather than on the discussion board.
And that's a fantastic way to keep them from getting embarrassed about if they did something. You don't have to like publicly. If you do it on the discussion board, it's out public and everybody else can sort of see how you would.
Or if I want to applaud a student, and I do that too. I mean, I have this little rule of thumb that any shaping or less positive feedback I ever make, I always make myself make at least one positive to someone else, just also for my own mental health.
Right.
So picking up on that, I do a similar thing, depending on what the conversation is. If I need to reply in a way that I think would be beneficial to the whole group, then I do it in the discussion. If not, I am doing it in the commenting on the speed grader. But one thing that I learned is that the students need to know that you've commented in speed grader. They have to actually know that to go look at the comment. Otherwise, all they'll see is their grade when they go and look at grades, and they won't necessarily look for the comments. There's like a bubble, but they need to know to click on it to read, to know that there's.
Well, they can also be notified of the comment, and so what's one of the very first things that I make students do is exactly that activity, which is go to the speed grade. I don't call it speed grader to them. I call it gradebook because that's what they call. Go to the gradebook and write me a comment, so that they will get familiar, and then turn on your setting so that you will be alerted when you get a comment from me or my TAs.
And again, those settings.
That's in their personal settings.
Sort of a different question. It's not really related to administration or settings, but what in terms of the use of a discussion forum for a purely online class versus a discussion forum that is a component of a face-to-face class? Just what for you, for anyone that has both experiences, how do you approach it?
And one is supplemental for that cohort.
Yeah, like as a discussion, like imagine the face-to-face class is the discussion forum. Discussion forum, is it a way to sort of review a week's discussion, prepare for the next, or is it sort of a continuation of one course period versus an online discussion forum? Seems slightly different, largely different because it.
I think it can be all of those things you described. It can be we didn't get to finish, or there was a couple of shy people or people with social anxiety in my classroom. And we really, if you ever want to get a good smack of empathy, read some of the tweets or blogs about quote unquote participation grades and people who just struggled through higher education, K through 12 and higher education, because participation was anything that only what was said in this room at this time. So it could be an extension. It can be also a preparation. It can be a way that, the reason why I started teaching online is because I felt like for graduate seminar, we're meeting once a week, and that's when people are attending to the content, and then they're going another 6 days without attending to the content. So it could be a way to, keep them attentive to the content when you're not physically there. But I think it can be all those things you just.
This is a really good point. In universal design, they talk about multiple means of expression, and they're not just talking about offer a essay or a video or whatever, but they're saying there's a face-to-face participation, which has traditionally been the one and only way to get participation. And online discussions is another one that lets people think through, as you were saying with language learners, think through, did I get this right? Is this what I wanted to say? Yes, okay, now hit submit. And that is so important in increasing, as the data show, this increases participation and your ability to hear from those people that you don't hear from in your classrooms. All right, what's next? I feel like we're doing pretty good, even though I don't know if we're doing it. It's chaotic. That's good.
I just got a question on this participation.
Yeah.
And two, what about if you've got the quiet people that don't like to post because they're concerned about sounding stupid or, or it's gonna go viral if it's really wrong or something. How do you get that going?
So one thing you can do is you can set up some discussions to be anonymous, which has its pluses and its minuses, as we all know. But it's a possibility so that people they can put the content out there. I don't understand question 3 on the test and I failed miserably, help me out, without identifying who they are.
Is it anonymous to you?
It's anonymous to us too.
In discussions, you can have anonymous student discussions?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, I know you could have anonymous surveys, but I didn't know you could have anonymous discussions. In Piazza, and maybe left, so.
Maybe it's in Piazza. I thought you could set it up.
I don't think you can do
I think peer review can be totally anonymous.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong.
I know in Piazza, you can set it up so that the students.
You want to get the questions out there. You want people to participate. You don't want them to have that feeling, but sometimes in an online forum, they'll feel like, well, that could have come across wrong. It's kind of like the same thing with social anxiety.
Well, and for each other, for students to student interactions, there are opportunities for that that are very important to have that anonymous thing. For formative feedback, as an instructor, it's important that they have opportunities to give feedback, I think, that is anonymous. But in discussions and assignments, I think that it can be useful to have it anonymous for each other, but as an instructor, I need to know.
Is there a way to keep this kind of private though, within the classroom?
Well, by default, only people enrolled can see it.
Well, right.
They could take screenshots, and there's really no way to.
Yeah, that's and then that's. I mean,
So there
that's
is
the
like,
same-
so if somebody didn't write something great, thought provoking, and I said, I want to save that for next year and do your course again.
Yeah.
There's really no way to prevent that either.
Absolutely not.
That's like any other course.
Just any other digitized content.
But you can have, anonymous survey questions that you don't even know, who does that. And those you can bring, after they have the survey, you can publish the results. So that would be a way to share that content without attaching it to a grade or an individual. All right, in the last 1 minute.
Piazza.
Any last, we can't talk about Let's talk about Piazza. Everything you need to know about Piazza in a minute. Thank you for coming. Please, if you could fill this out and drop it off anywhere on the way out, that'd be great. And Tim, thank you for driving. Can I hire you to come back and drive more? Coffee, of course. That's what I feed.
No, not at all.
I didn't know.
Something that there's no checkbox. There is no checkbox. There's no checkbox.
Hey, tomorrow we're talking about screens in the classroom. Good thing, bad thing? Ban them? Do we use them? How do they affect what happens in the classroom?